What if your dream job turned into your darkest nightmare?
This man is one of the most powerful, one of the most influential. So it meant a lot to me to actually have the opportunity to work with somebody of that magnitude.
What if the person you admired ended up being your biggest fear? For years, Sean Diddy Combs projected the image of a self-made mogul.
In his backyard in Los Angeles, I couldn't believe, like, wow, I'm a part of this now.
The king of hip-hop, the ultimate businessman, and a cultural icon. But now, the polished exterior is crumbling.
A guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom,
and behind it, a disturbing pattern of silence, power, and control. This isn't tabloid gossip. These are allegations from someone who was closer than family, his personal assistant of 10 years. Phil Pinnis worked behind the scenes, saw everything, and kept Diddy's secrets. Until now, this is the story Diddy never wanted out.
This is the first time that I'm speaking about it. Something that I'll never forget, actually.
I saw the man behind the empire. Phil Pinnis speaks out. Phil Pinnis wasn't just an assistant. He was Diddy's right-hand man for nearly a decade. From managing logistics to handling crises, Phil was on call 24/7. He traveled the world, coordinated personal affairs, and saw what no outsider could ever imagine. In his own words, "I know what I saw. I know what I witnessed." And what he witnessed, he says, wasn't just the typical stress of celebrity life. It was a pattern of fear, manipulation, and psychological warfare. He would weaponize people's dreams, Phil says, use your ambition against you.
He got me.
This wasn't just about a tough boss. This was about control, and the price of disobedience, swift and brutal consequences. It was like a cult, inside the culture of fear. Working for Diddy, according to Phil, was like living under constant surveillance. Every move was monitored, every word had consequences. There were cameras everywhere, people watching you, even in the shadows, Phil recalls. He describes the environment as a cult-like atmosphere, where loyalty was demanded and questioning the boss was unthinkable. Staff were trained to never say no. Even personal time wasn't really yours. Days off, rare. Privacy, non-existent. Phil says Diddy often tested loyalty with demeaning tasks or impossible requests just to see if you'd push back. And if you did, you were gone. Some staff allegedly lasted only days. Others stayed longer, out of fear, not respect. He knew where the line was and crossed it. Phil isn't vague about what he witnessed. He claims Diddy didn't just demand obedience. He actively pushed people past their limits. He was calculated. He knew exactly how far he could push you, and then he'd push further. From verbal abuse to emotional breakdowns, the goal seemed to be domination.
Savage! I'm a savage! Oh!
Phil remembers incidents where employees were publicly humiliated and screamed at in front of others, and then expected to carry on as if nothing happened. There were also darker moments. Hotel rooms trashed, bizarre outbursts, and allegations of physical intimidation. While Phil stops short of naming victims, he insists he saw things that deeply disturbed him. We all knew something was coming. The raids and the collapse. In 2024, the FBI raided Diddy's properties in Miami and Los Angeles as part of a federal investigation involving trafficking, assault, and other serious allegations. To Phil, it wasn't shocking. It was inevitable. According to him, long before the headlines hit, whispers of NDAs, settlements, and sudden staff departures were common behind closed doors. People disappeared, he says. Not literally, but they left quickly, quietly, and never spoke again. These weren't normal resignations, they were strategic silences, the kind that money buys, and when the FBI finally moved in, Phil wasn't surprised. I thought, finally, maybe now people will start talking. The secrets were buried, but not gone. One of the most chilling parts of Phil's interview involves the secrets he says were intentionally hidden, by design. Nothing happened by accident, he says. If you saw something, it was because you were supposed to see it, or you made a mistake. He claims Diddy kept his inner circle tight. Phones were confiscated at events. Surveillance was everywhere. Even guests were allegedly monitored for loyalty. And if you asked too many questions, you were cut off. Phil says there were also cleanup crews, people tasked with managing scandals before they ever became public. From paying people off to scrubbing digital traces, the goal was control. He didn't want a staff, he wanted servants. Another disturbing insight, the psychological games Diddy allegedly played with his employees. Phil says the culture wasn't just about control, it was about breaking people. He'd pit employees against each other, set you up to fail, then punish you for it. There were reports of staff being made to work 20-hour days, only to be berated for minor mistakes. One former bodyguard reportedly quit after being asked to fetch cheesecake in the middle of the night, a task meant to humiliate. Phil says this wasn't rare, it was the norm. There were parties, and then there were those parties. Phil touches lightly, but ominously, on the secretive world of Diddy's exclusive gatherings. There were the public parties, and then there were the ones nobody talked about. He doesn't go into graphic detail, but implies that guests were vetted, phones were banned, and attendees were expected to play by a different set of rules. There was a line, and people crossed it all the time. The internet has long been flooded with rumors about what really went on at Diddy's after-hours events, from strange rituals to celebrity encounters gone wrong. Phil doesn't confirm the worst of those rumors, but he doesn't deny them either. Why I stayed silent and why I'm speaking now. For years, Phil kept quiet, not out of guilt, but fear. There were NDAS, there were threats, but more than that, there was fear of being blacklisted. He says many in the industry are scared to speak out. Diddy wasn't just a boss, he was a gatekeeper. Saying the wrong thing could mean the end of your career. Phil waited, watched, and when the federal investigation began making headlines, he realized the time had come. I didn't want to be the guy who knew everything and said nothing. His goal now, accountability, not revenge. Diddy's empire was built on fear, not respect. Phil's final assessment is damning. People talk about his business genius, but what they don't see is the cost, the people he stepped on to get there. He believes Diddy's empire was built on intimidation, not inspiration. That behind the music, fashion, and millions, it was a scared man who needed to control everything around him. He wasn't the confident mogul you saw on TV. He was paranoid, always watching, always needing to dominate. Phil says the lawsuits and investigations are only scratching the surface, and that many others are still afraid to come forward. But with every voice that does, the mask slips a little further. No, more people will talk, the dam is breaking. Since Phil's interview aired, more former employees have begun speaking anonymously. Lawyers have hinted at additional suits. Investigative journalists are reportedly digging deeper. Phil believes this is just the beginning. Diddy didn't just break rules, he made his own. Phil suggests that Diddy didn't live by industry norms. He created a parallel system, one where his own rules ruled. Whether it was contracts, behavior at events, or how employees were treated, Phil says Diddy believed he was above accountability. There was always a way around the law, a loophole, a payoff. Phil recalls, he claims Diddy operated like a one-man corporation with no HR, no checks, no balances, only loyalty tests and fear tactics. High-profile friends often turned a blind eye. People knew, they just didn't want to get involved. Phil also describes situations where legal advisors were brought in not to fix problems, but to bury them. Staff were allegedly told exactly what to say if questioned, and some were paid off with bonuses or hush money. Is the truth out in the open? Because for years, Diddy's empire stood tall, protected by money, power, and silence. But when people stop being afraid, even giants fall. This is the story of the man behind the empire. The secrets, the fear, and the reckoning that's only just begun.